Dear students, the topic I am going to take up today is for the students of class 12 from their geography book, India, People and Economy. And the name of the topic is water resources. So dear children, you must be knowing that water is life. Water is an invaluable natural resource which sustains life on the earth. Earth is the only planet in the entire solar system which supports life because it contains water. 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by the oceanic water, whereas the fresh water constitutes only 3% of the total water. Demand for water is increasing rapidly with the increase of population. Some areas they have the surplus water, whereas the other areas are deficient of water. The chronic shortage of water is creating lot of tensions and conflicts. Children, you must be aware about the water conflicts between different states, and the most common is the Kaveri water dispute, which is there with the two southern states of India, that is Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. There are seasonal variations in the availability of water. So children, you must be knowing that what is a seasonal variation, because India is a land of monsoons and the short rainy season is there, which starts from June to September and ends in the September. So this is the only time when India receives rainfall, and rest of the year India goes dry. So there is a shortage of fresh water in India. India occupies 2.4% of the world's area, and in this percentage of the area, there are 16% of the world's population which is residing in India. So children, you can imagine with that percentage of population, India has to cover the requirements of the water. India has 4% of the water resources only. So that means we have long way to go to meet the demands of the increasing population of the country. Now dear children, we will be telling you about the two types of the water resources. One is the surface water and the second is the groundwater. So first I am going to take up what is surface water. It is available in the form of rivers, lakes, ponds and the other water bodies. Rivers obtain water from rainfall, or the other source for the water in rivers is that the melting of the snow. So that means the most important source of water on earth is known as the surface water, because it is considered to be the fresh water. And there are few major rivers in the northern part of India, namely the Indus, which is there on the western side, the Brahmaputra, the mighty river on the eastern side of the country, and the most sacred river of the northern India, that is the Ganga river. Now look at the screens children. This table shows you about the different river basins and their distribution of the surface water. There are two columns. One is for the annual runoff of the different rivers, and the second is the usable water of these rivers. Brahmaputra, if you see, which has the maximum annual runoff of the water, and that is 537 billion cubic meter water. Whereas the another river which follows Brahmaputra is river Ganga, that is with 501 billion cubic meter of the water. If we compare that with the usable water, you will find a lot of difference in both the rivers. For Brahmaputra, it is only 24 billion cubic meter, whereas for river Ganga, that is almost more than 10 times, you will find that is 250 billion cubic meter of the usable water. So my question to you dear children is, find out the reasons that why river Ganga has more percentage of the usable water in comparison to river Brahmaputra. So try to find out the reasons for that. Now, after surface water, we are going to take up the another type of the source of water, which is known as groundwater. A part of the rainwater percolates in the ground through the joints and the cracks in the rocks, and that water is known as the groundwater. About 60% of the groundwater is confined to the upper layers of the soil. So, that means the percolation, if it goes deep into the soil, then only in the lower layers we can find the moisture in the soil. Otherwise, that remains on the upper layers of the soil only. Now, dear children, we are going to take up the factors that affect the distribution of groundwater. As I have just now told you that groundwater is the one which percolates through the joints and the cracks. So, that means all the areas they are not same. So, this means that the water percolation is not the same in every part of the country. Now, what are the reasons for that? So, number one is the type of the rocks, or you can say the structure of the rocks. Second, the surface configuration. The third is rainfall variability, and the fourth is climatic conditions. Now, the soft and the permeable rocks of the northern plains of India allow the large quantities of water to percolate. So, children, I have used two terms. One is the permeability and the second is the percolation through the pores or the joints or the cracks. So, since the northern plains are made up of the soft rocks, so the result is the percolation of water is much more in the northern plains in comparison to the southern plateau, which is made up of the hard rocks. The entire land stretching from Punjab in the west to the Brahmaputra valley towards the east. So, that means children, this is a long stretch of the northern plains which are there in the country and are made up of the soft rocks called the sedimentary rocks. The plain is formed of the depositional work of the rivers originating from the Himalayan region, and most of the water which is known as the potential water, and the percentage for that is 42% of that water is confined in the states of the Great Plains in northern India. So, children, may I ask you that do you understand the term potential? So, I would like to make it clear that potential is the term used when we see that in future we have some percentage of the amount of water which can be used, and from where do we get that water? That water is the one which gets percolated through the sedimentary rocks in the northern plains. Now, if we talk about the peninsular plateau, this is the area in India which is made up of the old, hard and impervious rocks. So, when I say impervious, so that means the rocks which are non-porous and the rocks which do not allow the water to percolate. The main use of the groundwater is for the irrigation, which consumes about 3/4 of the total groundwater. So, the reason must be clear to you children that India being an agrarian economy, there is lot of pressure of agriculture on the land, and for that agricultural produce we need to depend upon irrigation, and that water is the groundwater, and the remaining 1/4 of the water is used for other purposes. So far, only around 38% of the total available groundwater resources have been developed. So, that means when we say developed, so that means the rest of the part is which is considered as the potential resources of the water. If the need be, those resources can also be developed and used for the various purposes. Now, children, I will be giving you two examples. Just listen to them carefully and try to answer the question which I will be putting up to you later. That is based on the development of the groundwater, and just think over that what can be the reason for this variation in these two particular states. One is Jammu and Kashmir with only 1.07% of the developed groundwater resources, whereas Punjab has 98% of the developed resources of the groundwater. So, the idea must be clear to you that why this lot of variability in the development of water resources is there in these two states. And the reason is quite clear, and the concept must have come to your minds that the only reason for that is Punjab being the most progressive state. Now, I will be telling you about few terms which are related with the water reserves only. One is the lagoons, another is the backwaters. India has a very long coastline. The concept is clear to you because India is surrounded by water on 3 sides. So, that is how the southern part of the country is known as a peninsular India, because there is water on 3 sides. So, that means that helps to have India a long coastline. But another feature which is attached with the coastline is that this coastline is not a straight line, it is an indented coastline which helps in the formation of the lagoons. So, children, when we take up the term backwaters, we mean it is a chain of the brackish lagoons which are found parallel to the Arabian Sea, and Kerala is the state which is most important and known for the backwaters. Now, dear students, just look at the screens and have a view of the lagoon. Now, this view is of the backwaters and this is the coastal view of the Arabian Sea. Now, we talk about the water demand and utilization. So, why do we need to have more water? What are the different utilities of the water we talk about? India is basically an agricultural country where nearly 2/3 of the total population is engaged in agriculture. To increase the agricultural production, we have to improve the irrigation system of the country. There are 3 different sectors: agricultural sector, domestic sector and industrial sector. You can see that the agricultural sector uses 89% of the surface water, and that is the first largest sector which uses that much high amount of the water. And as far as the groundwater is concerned, the agricultural sector uses 92% of the groundwater as well. And the second sector is domestic sector, where 9% utilization of the surface water is there, and that is the second largest sector, and domestic sector uses 3% of the groundwater as well. And the last leading sector is industrial sector, which uses 2% of the surface water and 5% of the groundwater. Now, on the screens, there is a statistical representation of the use of the surface water, what you have seen on the table. So, this pie diagram shows the largest portion, that means the lion's share is being used by the agricultural sector, followed by domestic, and last is the industrial sector. So, this is the use of the surface water. This diagram shows the groundwater withdrawals. Again, for the groundwater, you can see that the agricultural sector is the most leading sector using the maximum percentage of the water, followed by the industrial, and then lastly it is the domestic sector. So, children, till now what we have discussed under the chapter water resources is that what is the utility of water, why do we require water, and what are the important statistics as far as the water is concerned on the planet Earth, because Earth is considered to be the only watery planet, with the result the life is possible on the Earth. And besides that, we have done the surface water and the groundwater as well, and the utility of these 2 types of the water for the various sectors: agricultural sector, industrial sector and domestic sector. Thank you.